D-Link has been in business for over 20 years. Started out making business products way back, and has been very active in new product development and trying to stay ahead of the curve and be a leader rather than a follower. It's a very competitive field right now, so there's a lot of new stuff coming out. Sometimes we're ahead of the curve, sometimes we're not. Wi-Fi, 802.11n. Interchangeable sort of terminology. The whole 802.11 standard is the wireless standard that everybody uses today. Before there was a widespread IEEE standard, there were some proprietary wireless products. Those have all pretty much disappeared for this purpose. There are other wireless transmissions, there's Bluetooth and other things, and we're focused very heavily on the 802.11 standard, specifically the 11N, which is the latest. That was ratified last September, October timeframe. And the really great thing that that does is it extends distance much further than the previous standard, and it increases the speed a lot further than the previous standard. The technologies used to make that work are also more robust and tolerate interference a lot better. So if you've got an old 11G product and you're wondering is it worth upgrading to 11N, absolutely. There's a lot of advantages. Depends on the house you have too. Maybe you're only connecting within the same room. You just don't want to have a cable running across the room and trip over it. You know, you might not see a tremendous improvement there. You'll see definitely speed, but you don't need the distance. But you will gain security as well. The security that's part of the standard and part of the new products is much more safe for you, so you have to worry about your neighbors tapping in and getting their internet. Question in the back?
Oh, just new homes that are being built, are they more friendly to Wi-Fi or?
No, not really. And so there's a number of factors of course, distance, like we talked about, and how many walls, the material of the wall, whether it's glass, metal, brick, drywall, and the angle. So if you think about trying to shoot an arrow straight through a wall, and it has to pass through, you know, the thickness of a 2x4 and a couple of pieces of sheetrock, you know, what does that come out to? Like 6 inches or something. But if you go at an angle and you try and shoot that arrow through, it's actually going to go through a lot more wall. So people say, well, it's only going through one wall in my house, but it's off at an angle like that, and that's a lot of interference. And when it does that, it might be hitting metal, brick, whatever. So yeah, new home construction really isn't any better. You know, we have to talk about rated speed and actual speed. And the rated speed for G is 54 megabits per second. And when we say rated, what do you really get out of it? Well, there's overhead in the protocol, there's overhead in your applications. And so when you're trying to do 54 megabit 11G in an ideal situation where you have, say, the two computers right next to each other, you might get 25 to 35 is typical. So, you know, rule of thumb, divide it by 2 and add a little bit more, and that's typically what you should expect. So if you're saying, oh, I'm really not getting 300, you know, well, in reality you won't. So it's only in very extreme cases and with certain protocols that you can actually get close to that. But with the protocols we're all using to surf the internet, that's TCP/IP, you're going to wind up with, you know, like 2/3 or 3/4 of the rated speed as a maximum. So you go from 54 to 300 when you go from G to N. So all the new products for the last couple of years now have been 11N with what they call a dual stream. And I may have touched on this last time. So it's interesting. They have a lot of options in the standard. And the options allow for, basically, manufacturers can come out with various products at different price levels and different performance levels. So if you're one of those die-hard people that absolutely has to have the biggest, baddest, fastest products, you know, there are top-of-the-line products for you that come with, you know, higher price levels. Then there are entry-level products where you want the advantage of the new technologies, but you just don't think it's worth spending all that money because you're maybe not that much of a power user. So there are different levels for that, and it makes it a little bit confusing when you're standing in Fry's looking at products and trying to read and figure out what they are. But what happens with 11N is it uses a thing called MIMO, multiple in, multiple out, and it's an antenna array that senses the airwaves, looking for the strongest signal. but it doesn't do like the old technology. 11G used to just compare two antennas. They call it diversity. And it took the strongest signal from the two antennas, and that's what it used. But with MIMO, that's in the 11N technology, it does a very strange math convolution. And what it does is it takes the best components from all the antennas, brings them together, and instead of it being one antenna at a time, it's multiple antennas that are adding together. And so this is what gives it a robustness. In fact, there are some situations where if you have somebody or a wall or a person or something standing in the way that represents interference, the signals that are bouncing off might actually make a stronger signal than if it was straight through without interference, which is really interesting about the technology, and which it's reflective of what makes it so good. So in conclusion, it's basically 11G in previous generation products, you're limited to 54 megabits per second. Now you're going up to 300 megabits per second is the common 11N data rate. But here's where it gets confusing. There's 150, 300, 450, and 600 megabit products that are all 11N. So you have to read the box carefully, and if you're going to compare two products and one product is $99, the other one's $200, there's probably a reason. You have to figure out, is one of them 150 megabits at $99 versus the $200 that's at 600 megabits, and you have to make those comparisons. Yes. So it's like anything, you know, you try to remain backwards compatible. That means you're only as compatible as, you know, the weakest link in the chain, and your oldest technology is the slowest. And if you try to use that with mixed old technology and new technology, you're only going to be as fast as your old technology. How about that too? So most of the wireless products will have an antenna sticking out. Some of them have internal antennas, so the antenna won't be visible, but inside there is some type of an antenna. They won't look like this inside. They'll look probably like a couple of copper-clad printed circuit boards that are square shaped with squiggly lines or something on them, but they are the internal antennas. Internal antennas tend to have less sensitivity than the external antennas, although the technology is getting pretty good, and a lot of the internal antennas are pretty sensitive. But in a laptop, not only do you have that issue of like how big is the antenna, where is it, but you've got a lot of electronics around it. And one of the things that you can find to even prove yourself, if your wireless utility has a level meter, like your cell phone, like how strong your signal is, you can just kind of rotate your laptop, and just small movements in the position of your laptop could make a big difference. We've seen this in the lab, we've seen it in real practice. That's the funny thing about wireless. It bounces off of walls, it does all kinds of things. There's interference from microwaves, cordless phones, and so sometimes just a small movement might make a difference. But the difference isn't going to be that great. There are external antennas that you can connect, but 802.11 relies on at least 2, probably 3, and with the 600 relies on 4 antennas. So connecting that many antennas to your notebook, it's just not going to work. You're not going to see products like that because the connectors themselves will be bigger than the product. It's, you know, kind of strange how that's worked out now. Wireless is found in routers. It's typically these routers have firewalls built into them. I don't think today you'll find too many products that don't have all that built right in. If you need more ports, we have switches. Some of them have PoE, which is power over Ethernet, and cameras, and some wireless access points use that. Bridges and extenders, we'll cover that. Some alternate connections can be made by power line or coax. We have storage that you can attach to your network. That makes it very easy for everybody in your network to access it, and it makes it easy for you to access it from outside your network. So this is a really interesting thing about being connected to the internet and having a network in your house, is you can make things so that if you're on the road, you can access something that you might need back at your house. Or you can share it with somebody in your family who may live out of state. So you can set up like pictures and maybe your audio files and share them with people if you'd like to. And of course, it's all done securely, so you can assign passwords to people and not worry about hackers. SharePort is our USB printer sharing. You can plug in a USB printer, scanner, multifunction printer. If you guys have like the all-in-one, it's a printer, it's a scanner, it's a fax machine, those will work with this. Or if you have a USB storage that you want to plug into it, allows you to share that with people on your network, and it makes it very easy for you know, not having to have a computer on all the time. It just plugs into the router, which is on anyways, and allows you to share that printer. Try to make some of the security easier to set up with the thing they call WPS, something of that nature. And the idea is that you press buttons on the router and on the client adapter, and they look for each other, and they start to do a handshake, and they synchronize, and they set up their own security. If you've ever tried to do it manually, you have to put in these long 32-bit keys and things, and it gets a little bit confusing. So this really makes it a lot easier. The internet addresses that we use, and here's a couple of examples right here. It's like a house address. You need an address for every home from your service provider. That's how data knows to go from point A to point B to point C all around the world. Well, there's only so many combinations you can get with this number system, and we're about to run out. I think middle of 2011, give or take. Lots of people projecting, but we're kind of at the end of that. So instead of just upgrading addressing alone, they're upgrading the whole standard to a lot of other things, including security, so that where security was not defined in the old IP standard, it is now defined in the new IP standard. And so, again, there's lots of options. It's up to the manufacturers how they implement. But things that were not thought about or weren't given much consideration are now a priority in the new standard. So products coming out today, if you're going to buy something today, you'd want to look for IPv6 ready, so that next year when we go to IPv6, you don't have to throw it away and get something new. This thing is really cool. Lots of stuff in it. If you don't have a lot of space and you like things to be integrated, this has full 11N wireless router, but there's no antennas. It's all hidden inside. It has your firewall and things you would expect. There's 4 ports to expand your internal network. There are 2 USB for the share port printer sharing. And there's a little trap door here. And it takes a notebook size hard drive, and that turns this into network attached storage, NAS, which means you could share anything that's on this drive with people that are on your network. And there's a screen on the front of this, and the screen you can use for status. Remember we showed the widgets? You can get information like this on the screen. And we said, well, heck, if we can do that, why don't we let it show pictures? So this comes with a free account for framechannel.com. The Frame Channel account lets you set up a secure website that's yours, that you can upload your own pictures to, or you can just set it up that I want to see weather and traffic and stock reports. I want photos from NASA to show up. You get to pick. This little screen will let you set what you want to show up on your screen. And if you have your own pictures, you just upload them, and it's really nice.